This is Lizzie from Let Zoe Spoil You.
And Sagira from Sagira Salutes You. And together we are Newbie versus Weeaboo. Sagira, Newbie.
Lizzie, a Weeaboo.
It's Newbie versus Weeaboo.
Ahoy!
Howdy, hi.
Hello, and welcome to another exciting rendition of Newbie versus Weeaboo. I am Sagira, the newbie.
I'm Lizzie, I am the Weeaboo.
It's been a long time since we actually introduced ourselves away from the title sequence.
Okay, yeah. I was a bit like, oh, this is new, I don't know what's going on.
She's going off script. Off script. Well, it's a new year by the time this comes out, so let's try new things, like actually advertising ourselves. So we are into a new era of films, I believe.
Yes.
We've moved on from the series of like Parasite and Madoka and things like that, and we last did Vampire D. So now we're on to the director is
Yoshiaki Kawajiri.
Yoshiaki Kawajiri. Kawajiri. I need to work on my diction. And yes, so the first film that you have introduced is Lensman.
Ooh.
Secret.
Well, first we have to do the what did you think of the movie?
Well, I need to introduce the film first.
Oh no, normally.
Oh no, you're right. I'm so mad.
It's not how it goes. It's not how it goes. You give me a garbled script and I tell the name of the film.
Oh my god. See, this happened last time as well. Like, I completely forget the order of things.
You're all like, ooh, let's reintroduce ourselves, but let's not actually do what we do.
No, we're throwing the old stuff out the window. That's it. I'm done with that now. It's my show now, and you're just my guest.
That makes you watch random animes.
Yes. All right, go on then. Ask your question.
So, Sagira, what did you think of the movie today?
Okay, here's my synopsis. I did write the synopsis. A young boy chosen to be a part of a group that he didn't sign up for. He takes the role to avenge his father and save the universe. Or does he? Bum, bum, bum. That's what I got from it.
Oh, I mean, it's simple and it's to the point. But yes, we are watching Lensman, Secret of the Lens, basically.
Secret of the Lens.
Which was the first film that
was not a fart. Sorry. I moved my foot. It sounded like a fart. I don't know if the microphone picked up on that. So I'm just stating it now. My foot. We'll cut that out. You carry on.
So this is the first film that Yoshiaki Kawajiri worked on. He was the second director of this, so it wasn't his own project. He'd been basically a character designer and animator. He'd been working his way up the ranks in the studio system. And so someone was like, oh, let's give him a shot as like co-director, and we're making this project. Let's see how he does on this film. And if he does well, then we'll let him direct his own stuff.
Fabulous. Okay, so I've put it into sections as you like me to do, which takes time. So I start with first impressions. It opens with writing, which I never like, because it means that I have to read and interpret in my own way instead of visually watching what's going on. It kind of explains what was going on. I didn't quite understand it because I was coming from a place of what the hell is this? So can you explain what the pre-log or whatever was telling us?
Yeah, it's basically a load of jargon about the state of the universe. It's like, oh no, these factions are having a fight and this warrior race or secret service has been fighting them. But basically, this entire film is bloody Star Wars, including the writing at the beginning.
Thank you.
I
said this is very Star Wars, just full of Star Wars. I was like, there was like the ships look like they're inspired by Star Wars. The fact that one of the characters has a bun on the side of her head. If she had two, she'd be Leia. It's like, this is very, very Star Wars.
What's interesting is it's actually an adaptation of a Western novel series that came out in like the 50s. So it's classic science fiction novels predating Star Wars by quite a bit. And I'm like, I'm terrible because my research, I know that I don't actually have any of the facts, which makes me an awful like podcast host. And I'm like, but yeah, it was a series of science fiction. Yeah, but I'm a weeaboo. I'm not into classic American science fiction. Not really my niche. Like 80s and 90s anime. There we go. 1950s classic sci-fi. Apart from John Wyndham that I used to like to read. So yeah, so it was a series of novels that I think went on to inspire the scripts of Star Wars. But during the 80s, Japan were like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make an animated film out of this. So obviously it is the Star Wars thing of trying to throw you straight into the story. We're going, okay, the galaxy's having a shit time. Evil Force and its empire are taking over. There's like some rebels and they're trying to fight it, and they've got like a secret mission, and they're trying to get their codes to their secret base, but it's all got a bit Pete Tong, and this poor kid that lives in the middle of nowhere just accidentally like gets thrown into it's freaking Star Wars, like, but it turns out that secretly he has this inner power that he's able to channel to make him a guardian of the galaxy, like defender of the lens. And yeah, Star Wars stuff happens.
Well, this leads nicely onto the aesthetic of the film, which is Star Wars. And I'm someone who hasn't really seen Star Wars, so the fact that I picked up Star Wars from this means that it was very heavily what's the word? See,
are you trying to say influenced?
Influence, see?
But you've got to remember that the source material predates Star Wars.
It's just so strange, isn't it? It's like,
yeah.
Did Star Wars watch this and get it from them, or like?
I think because obviously, like, the novels would have described all the worlds and the places and the alien races, and actually, the alien races are very unique in this. It's one of my favourite things about it. They are very unique, very interesting. The plot, again, would have predated the Star Wars films by like some of them by about 20 odd years, I think. So every time we go, oh, it's very Star Wars influence, apart from the fact that it was like 20 years before Star Wars. Obviously, this film came out in the 80s, but so everyone was like, oh, it just copied Star Wars. I'm like, well, not really. It just has a very similar plot that because Star Wars is so massively well known that, like, I mean, this did really well in Japan and stuff because it was hard sci-fi, and hard sci-fi was doing quite well in the 80s. There was a lot of space travel, and Macross was the big massive thing in Japan that was huge, you know, bigger than Star Wars out there. So I don't know, the Japanese wouldn't have automatically gone, oh, this is like Star Wars. They might have been sitting there going, Star Wars, oh, this is a bit like Lensman.
One thing that I picked up on was, I feel like, I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but there's CGI in it. Is that right? Some of the computer effects and stuff. There's the ships and like the maze near the end and some of the psychedelic stuff. I feel like they were CGI.
No, it all have been cell animated. The CGI comes in when you see like the really blocky ship designs. That like, well, that's a CGI ship trying to do something.
It was also, I found that whenever it was up in space, it would have those kind of effects, those kind of like new age for the 80s technology way of doing animation. But when they went down onto the planet, like especially the first planet where everything seemed a bit more simple, all that went out the window. It was just pure animation. It was as if to say like, this is the future and this is the kind of present.
It was kind of like, we could have CGI, but because obviously we have a history of animating everything, this would be much easier if we just drew it all because we know what we're doing here. So I think things like spaceships kind of just like docking and stuff. But because I think the animation is gorgeous. Yes, it kind of looks dated, but if you look at it and you think about how much like hand-drawn animation, because this wouldn't have been the digital era yet, really, not as big as it is now. Hand-drawn animated cells to go into the bits that they're running down corridors, and the corridors are moving, and the shadows are casting, and the clothes are moving, and the hair is moving, and the weapons and blasters, and the effects. I'm like, that is some technical achievement.
Some of the effects, like the warping And when he was running through the maze and stuff, I was like, this would be a great VR game. Especially the warping, because if like you were just surrounded by that, I just love that feeling of like being thrown into space. So, and even just watching the screen, if you concentrate hard enough, it does look like you're moving. Like that's how good the animation is. It's great. So moving on from that, I would like to talk about the music. I love the music. Everything that I love was in this film. I just, every time something comes, I was like, yeah. Who cares about the film? Let's just listen to the soundtrack.
It's like they're escaping some things. This is so exciting. Like, no, the music's great. Absolutely love it.
The very first thing that you hear is, the only way to describe it is futuristic jungle. Is that the xylophone was like a jungly kind of sound, and then like you had the futuristic techno sounds, and it was just like, this is a really weird mix but goes really well together. So I love that. And then when Kin goes on to the ship, the very first one, the dilapidated ship, some doot doot lounge music comes on. I was just like, yes, lounge music, my favorite kind of music. So I'm getting down with that. Didn't go with what was happening at all, but was great.
I love the old man disco music. This is like this decrepit old man as a DJ going, yeah, and I'm like, yeah, I'd go to this disco. This is great. I love it.
Also classic bongo music at some point, like, yes, bring in the bongos. But I think, other than the doot doot music, I think my favorite music has to be when Kin's father dies, spoiler, and he stood at the window, and then this glam rock kicks in, and you're just like, yes, this is the 80s. And I was like, this could be a music video all by itself, this part. Like the lighting, the dramatic moment. It was just like, this is brilliant. So just like I said, the musical, if you don't watch the film, just listen to the music. It's so good. Saying that though, there was also moments where there was absolutely no music. Like you feel like there's music the whole way through, but then they'll be in space and there'll be silence, and all you can hear is pew 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 pew. And I feel like that was more immersive for those moments, rather than having like funky jazz music while the ships are firing. You know, it's like you don't need it for those bits. You don't need jazz in every moment of your life. Okay, that's just fact. I'm sorry to break it to you.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of jazz, so that's good for me. But I do like a film that knows when to use like scoring and when to use silence and when to let the sound design carry what's happening. Because good sound design, you can tell what's going on without having to have a piece of music trying to direct how you should feel about it. And it's like how you should be feeling about like ships firing in space there are ships firing in space.
Like I say, it's more immersive. It's more like you're in the action rather than this thing's happening, let's listen to something nice while it's going on. No, this isn't a nice moment to get down and funky. This is war. Okay, we need to be in it. Speaking of sound, one thing I just couldn't get over was how loud the footsteps were in every situation. Everything was clop, 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 clop. It wasn't even like it was on metal. It was like at one point Wazzle sounded like he was wearing high heels.
It's the rat-a-tat of his clawed alien feet.
It sounded like all of them had high heels on, and they were just like going down the shops. It was like clop, 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 clop. Like, you don't need clomp, clomp for every time they run. Like, really?
Picked up on that. Weird.
Go back and listen to the clomp, clomp of feet. Once you hear it the whole way through. Oh, no. I was just like, really? I didn't realise.
Really sturdy space shoes.
Really sturdy. Like it was as if it was like metal sole shoes on metal floor the whole time. Like just everything's metal. But yes, do go back and have a listen. Also, there was an excellent use of echoes. I think it was Chris and Buzzkirk were doing something in the ship, and they were talking, and suddenly it was like, oh, there's an echo. And it's little things like that you don't normally notice because it's just how it should be. But for some reason, in an animation, when they use that, it's like they had to think about that. You know, it's not naturally there. They don't go to the studio and go, oh, they're in a spaceship tunnel, they're obviously going to be echoing. It's like, no, you have to think about that. So I thought that was a really good detail that they came up with. Let's move on to characters. Now, the main character, is it Kim or Kin?
He's kin.
Yeah, because when I checked online to write up the characters' names, it said Kinnell rather than Kimball, wherever it is. And it's
Yeah.
Kinn, so whatever the rest of the name is. And I was like, but it sounds like they're all saying Kim. So I thought I'd check.
They're probably just weren't pronouncing it properly. I mean, I don't know. I've always called it kin.
Americanized.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Well, Kin is our protagonist, and he's a sassy young man who's obviously all about the new tech. He doesn't really care about the vintage from his line of piece of junk as he got into the ship. Like, what are you talking about? This is history, man. How dare you?
Typical teenager. I don't care about what's been in the past. I want the new stuff. And I'm like, dude, you're never going to learn if you don't know how the old stuff works. But no.
Exactly. You can't improve something until you know where it's come from. He's also fast thinking, man of action, as we know from that very first scene when the ship was going to crash. He was like, hey, I'll just jump on the ship. You know, it's like, cool, whatever, you do you.
And I love to be like, strong and like, otherwise the Lens would never have chose him if he was just being like, oh no, I'm not doing that. No, need someone with courage.
True. And when he does get the Lens, I absolutely love that he was just like, why me? Like a moody teenager. Like, I forgot. Why me? Why? Rather than what the hell's going on? Who's this dude who's just passed over? No, why me? Why me? My life sucks. Why do I have to be the chosen one? I mean, I might be reading into that.
It's like the Green Lantern thing, when the Green Lantern dies and like gives it to Hal, yeah, and he's like, you are now the Green Lantern, and he's like, I just found an alien that's given me a magic ring and now I have powers. Really me? Like, oh shit, why did I have to find you?
The other thing is that he was almost sporting a camel toe. He was wearing, almost. It wasn't quite the full camel toe, but it was very Barbie-esque down there. Do you know what I mean? It was not that you see him naked, but when your clothes fit you that well, it's like there's not a lot going on down there.
Spacesuits. just assume that he has to tuck. You don't want your willy shot off in space. It's like better just keep it tucked. It's much safer.
Keep it tucked. See, high heels and tucking. I mean, you can't get more drag than this. Who knew that the subtext of this show was drag?
Lensman secretly about drag culture. I mean, that explains how fabulous like the snails looked with all their jewelry.
My gosh, the snails! I love them.
He's typical like your protagonist type. So it's always the character that I'm like, you're cool for the story, but you're not going to be my favourite.
Well, let's move on to Buzzkirk, who, when he first entered, I thought was a cat. He had the little horns, which looked like ears, and he had the big bushy moustache, which looked like whiskers. He looked like a cat creature. And I was like, oh, this just got interesting. And I saw him in the light, and I was like, oh, he's just a big hairy bear.
Yeah. He's a ruffled, tumble, fun-loving, bear.
Yeah, he is the comic relief of it. He's obviously well versed in what he does, because they always have to show that, okay, yes, he's a buffoon, he's a bit of a clumsy oaf, however he got to where he is because he's good at what he does. I always feel like you need to justify that rather than, oh, he just fell into this job, he just fell into this rock. No, he worked his way to get there. And also the fact that they give us the backstory that he's an old friend of the family of Kin's, like that just shows that they've known each other for a long time, so he will obviously care about Kin. He will obviously take care of him when it all goes tits up, which it does.
Oh.
On to Kin's dad. I love Kin's dad. He's a no nonsense and cares for his kid kind of guy. He lives on a planet which is, I would call it a futuristic Flintstones.
Yeah.
Because it's got the combine harvester, but he's been helped by robots, and the robots replace the dinosaurs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Robots.
It's Tatooine, really, isn't it? Come on, let's not lie. Or the planet that inspired Tatooine, since this came first. But yeah.
And I love how, they're like, oh my God, this ship's going to come straight for the planet. And then his dad's like, Buzzcut, if I don't make it, make sure you look after Kin. And the next second, Kin's on the ship going, Dad, I'm on the ship. Dad's not shocked in the slightest. Like, Dad is just like, okay, so do this. And it's like, no, wait a minute, what? You're not impressed that your son saved you? Like, he got to the ship in time to save you? You were done for. You were like, I'm dead. Like, here's my will. Look after my son. Take it. Like, you were checked out.
No time to be emotional. People to save.
Yes, but you can be
Uprisings
proud.
of Spurge.
You can be proud of your son for making such a quick decision to save you, but you're just like, okay, there's like no emotion to it at all. And then when it was the bit where they had to split up, and he's like, he's going, Dad, I want to come with you. He's like, you can't come with me. So how do you stop a child? You gut punch them. Amazing parenting.
That's the anime way to do things. If you want to stop a character doing something, you punch them in the guts to knock them out and go, here you go. It's a classic trope. It's been in anime for years. You just accept it.
But what I like about it is he gut punches him, knocks him out, and then passes him to Buzzcut going, keep him safe. It's like, you just gut punch the boy.
Yeah, but you had to stop him following him.
There are other ways.
Stun gun him? No.
Exactly. There's
Anime trope. It's part of the genre.
It's the future. There's many ways. But also, the sad thing is that was their last moment together. Gut punch. So next we have Chris, who is our female protagonist, and she's a sassy woman, and she's living in a man's world because she is basically the only woman in this entire thing.
Yeah.
And it took 30 minutes for the first woman to appear. It's like, wow, that's a long introduction.
Yeah. 1950s American science fiction. It's amazing that she's actually got as much personality as she has. I was kind of thinking she'd just be like, oh no, rescue me. And it's like, no, you do things. You're all right.
Well, that's it.
I mean, she does get a bit like, anime of the 80s, like molested by everything, because that's what happens in this. It's like, oh no, I'm female. Oh no, these weird planet tentacles are getting me. Oh no, I'm being torn apart by weird slime things. It's just, yeah, that's just what happened to women in pretty much all of the films of this genre. It's like, oh no, I'm being pulled by gross stuff and tentacles.
Well, it's quite convenient that she's the nurse she's like the healer of the group. It's like, you need your healer. And well manicured fingers. I'm impressed. I can't keep manicured fingers from sitting on the sofa, and yet she's out in space, she's tapping on keys and she's bandaging people, and yet nails are incredibly manicured. I was impressed. Also, she's the first person to explain the lens to him. Obviously, Dad and Buzzcut know about the lens, but they decided to just keep stum and not say anything. And then the guys come on to say, hey, we've been looking for you. Oh, he's got the lens. It got transferred. How did this happen? And just no one said anything to him about what is happening. And he's just like, what is going on? And finally, it takes a woman to sit him down and go, this is what this is. And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's like, you can't just be like, let's run to danger and do shit. It's like, oh, by the way, so this is what's happening to you, just so you've got a little bit of more like emotional resonance with what's happened and like a bit clearer head. Yeah, no. You need some reason in all this chaos, and obviously Chris brought the reason.
Mm-hmm. And I also think that the attraction between the two of them was a little bit unrealistic to start with, because he started off as such a young character, and she comes in and she seems quite mature.
Yeah.
She seems quite worldly in comparison to him, and I don't know, it just seems a bit like older woman syndrome. But I mean, they probably are the same age.
Yeah.
But it seemed like she was older than he was, and
she seems to be more mature. Even if they are the same age. I think probably in the series of books there was time to develop like some interest, rather than like teenage crush to yes, I love you too. It's like, whoa, that happened fast. But I suppose we've only got an hour and a half and we need some romance in this.
I also put it down to that nurse patient thing where they say, like, because the woman is caring, or the person is caring for the other person, it gives an attraction, doesn't it? Because it's that caring, loving person that's looking after you. Next character, Wurzel.
Wurzel is best boy.
He is.
Or alien dinosaur thing, but still best.
a Volatian or something like that.
Yeah.
But yes, I've put here best character. He
Oh,
was
God,
my
yeah.
favorite. And there's something about that like glassy eye, like no pupil. It's just kind of like a jewel eye. I love that look, and that's probably what made me go, you're the best character.
Dinosaur
again-
body. I'm just like, look at you, humanized monster body. I'm into that.
And again, this is the next character who explains the lens. I mean, it does make sense because he also has a lens. But again, it's like, trust it to be an alien who has to come along and be like, hey, humans, this is how you explain something.
Yeah.
It's, oh. But
But
yeah, I think he was a great character. He was like the true hero. He was the one saving the hero all the time.
it's just basically he's that kind of like, he's not quite the lone wolf character, but he's not always in it. He kind of swoops in, saves, goes off and does his thing, swoops in, saves, goes off and does his own thing, and you're like, oh no, they're all in danger. It's like, just wait for it. Wazza will turn up and be like, hey, I see you in trouble. I'm back.
Yes, he was the true hero of this film, I feel.
The fact they had to try and pick them all up and fly off, and they're not light, and he's like, I'm flying you away.
No, exactly. I was like, I was very impressed.
Strong alien.
Especially with Buzzkirk as well on the end of that. It was like, really? Holy crap. So next we'll talk about the aliens on the ship. I didn't get all their names. There was too many. It was a mix. They're kind of mix of like alien, demons, dinosaur type things. Like it's just like every mush of your typical
kind
reptile looking thing.
Bad guy designs.
And what I loved was this whole joke of like each, like there was never a commander long enough.
Yeah, he was like, did you fail me? Well, you had one chance, you're dead. And the next one's like, I'll do better, I didn't do well either. And it was just like, oh.
I like it with like the first one where he was like, you constantly underestimate the power of the lens. And the first commander was like, sorry, my lord, as if to say like, my bad. Like, oh, soz. And what I loved about each one was like you always had this person who was ready to take over, and they just slowly sidestep away, knowing that it was going to get blasted. Like, do.
You can just tell it's a really cutthroat, like evil empire where basically everybody is waiting in the winds to like rise up the ranks, and they do that by basically trying to get each other killed, and then being like, haha, now I am the head honcho now. So watch your backs, guys.
And yeah, they'll just dobbing each other in it. It's just like, yeah, he did it. He's rubbish. And then they just just shuffle off to the side.
Absolute no friendship, no camaraderie, no respect. They're just like, he did it. And it's like, I could do better. And someone else is waiting there going, can't wait for you to slip up because I'm going to tell the big boss.
It's like, ooh, you in trouble.
They're just dicks, basically.
Oh, that was so funny. And then the last character that I have here that has any relevance to the thing is Bill, which I haven't got very much written about him other than he walks like he's lost his horse. He's got these bow legs. He's just an old man party animal who wants to be in the action. That's all you can really say about him.
Yeah, it's like a combination of a couple of like character archetypes that you'll see as we go through the Yoshiaki Kawajiri films. Like there's the old man character, and this is the first film where you can, as you watch them, when you rethink of this film, you'll be like, well, that would have been a Kawajiri adaptation or like idea for how the character would be. It kind of like becomes more apparent. But he was definitely the character that I went, that is a Yoshiaki Kawajiri character. The little old man that you're like, you're a little old man that's far too alive for like...
Sassy. So sassy.
Like, you've got so much life in you. I mean, you're discoing, you're drunk, you're like, I'm partying, oh, look at the
fights.
Yeah.
Just a man of chaos.
Yes.
So I'm going to move on to the highlights of the film. So not go through the film, but the bits that made me comment. So my first one is that the ship was called the Britannia. Is there a reason why it was called the Britannia? Because obviously that's Britain. But
I suppose like in classic sci-fi and stuff, there was still that idea that like, I mean, I'm not a classic sci-fi buff. I mean, as much as I like sci-fi and I like Star Trek, I always think when things use and especially like when anime use references to British culture within sci-fi settings, it's always kind of like a throwback to when we used to colonize and own half the world. So if we'd continued that way, we would have been the force. So it's basically taking what we did to Earth and then putting it out there on a bigger scale. So Britannia would have been, look, it's the Great Britannia in the galaxy. Like, so either going, oh, look how great our military force was, or look how conquering and how much we are owning. But that's only a theory.
I was getting a lot of like different animes from this, whether it was inspired, it was just me thinking like it's very similar. One of them was the lens on the back of his hand. It reminded me of the jewel in Jenny's head from Bucky O'Hare. Did you ever watch that?
I did watch Bucky O'Hare, yes.
Yes, and it's just
Captain Bucky O'Hare. It's been a very long time since I watched that. That was the 90s.
Tell me about it. Yes, I loved Bucky O'Hare, and I loved Jenny because she was a cat. But like her jewel, just the way it's drawn, it's like there's a certain way of drawing things, and jewels in skin seems to be the same whether it's in your head or in your hand. But it just totally reminds me of that.
I think they use it quite a lot in anime. There's a lot of like, you know, like in Western stuff, when you've got a power source and it's normally like a gem or stuff, it's in a something. Like in anime, all these power sources seem to be, they are far more invested in like bioorganic technology and bioorganic science fiction. So it's always kind of, there's very much embedded powers. And you see that even in like the magical girl stuff, where their gems will be embedded in them rather than like on a something.
Unless you're Madoka.
Yeah.
But
that's a slightly different one. I mean, we're in the 80s at the moment.
It made me laugh when they were like, the wrath of Hellmans. And I was like, mayonnaise? That's all I got. So just every time we talked about Hellmans, I was like, he's a big jar of mayonnaise.
The evil mayonnaise empire. Dun, dun, dun.
That was just my little joy. Okay, so is it just me, or does no one explain what the lens does through most of the film? Like,
I just think it gives you inner power.
Well, it kind of does the psychedelic thing, saying that it's someone's psyche or something right at the start of it, but that didn't really give us much to go on. And then they were just like, the lens, it has so much power. It's like, what power? And up until the last 15 minutes of the film, it was just a glorified mobile phone. You just contacting people on it.
You have to learn how to use it and channel it. You don't just get a magical object in your hand and go, haha, I can harness 100% of the power. Again, it's one of those things that in a movie setting, it kind of had to go from like, la 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 la, I'm the chosen one, all of a sudden, rather than like, pretty sure it would have taken a longer time for you to kind of access the various powers, learn to use it, learn to channel whatever inner energy you've got that makes you a lensman.
But it was the lens itself that told him how to use it. Like, surely it was
playing shy.
Surely he would have known, like, that it had that type of power, and he could at least explain to him, saying like, "Hey, you've got to learn to harness the power." Blah blah blah. And he didn't. He was just like,
"You have to. The power's inside you, and you have to be the one that you can't be told how to use it. You have to do it for yourself. It's all about inner awakenings." A trope of the times.
Let's talk about the fluffy tentacle attack.
Attacked by like what, pussy willows? I don't know what was going on.
What was that about? I feel like it was just
tentacles in a science fiction film in anime in the 80s. You know.
I felt like it was literally just there to introduce Wazzle, and that was it. That's the only reason why they had that scene.
They're nicely animated. They're all very mobile and fluid and moving and whoosh, whoosh, whoosh and fluffy. And I'm like, oh, if they weren't killer, I would love to go like, let's stroke on the fluffy tentacles. But they'll probably try and tear me apart. But in a slightly erotic way, because you have to hear the woman going, oh, because, you know, you can't have that sound effect not in one of these films.
But did they belong to anything, or were they just literally tentacles? We'll never know. It's just because as he blasted them, they just kind of disappeared. Like, it didn't belong to anything. It wasn't like the planet was a thing that had lots of tentacles.
I always went with like their weird sentient plants. So it's like weird molesto grass.
Molesto grass. Ah, the molesto grass is coming through nicely this year.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why would you let that grow everywhere? You know, but yeah, no.
Molester grass. They have pedo daisies growing on them. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Now, something that bothered me was, you know, when Wazzle was trying to fly them out with the electric thing going back and forth, back and
Yeah.
forth. Kin gets electrocuted.
Yes.
Why did the others not conduct the electricity? Why did it stop at Kin? Why did science not prevail here and go, oh, we all conduct electricity. Let's just whoop that
His
up.
inner desire to protect his friends meant that he just channeled the electricity through himself. Because he's a Lensman and that's what they can do.
Is that fact or is that you specify?
That's the great thing about science fiction mixed with magic stones. Make up any bullshit and it'll be like, you know, he's a Lensman and he's got great powers. So the energy went through him and he's like, no, I must channel and trap this inside me. Maybe store it up for later. I cannot let my friends suffer.
I will buy that. What you're selling, I will buy it. I feel like a big chunk of this was missing. Mostly the bit where we meet Bill, because Bill's in the club.
Yeah.
And they had just been shot out of their little pods, their safety pods, which I was having flashes of samurai pizza cats at that point. The three go into the tubes and go poo.
Yep.
It was like samurai pizza cats.
This is early anime that went on to like inspire all those things.
Absolutely. But then, so they all get shot off in space, and then it cuts to Bill, and it's like, oh, okay, we don't see them land or anything. In the club with Bill is Buzzkirk, and we're like, oh, so he was okay, he landed fine, but he's having a drink. So it's like, right, so he must have been out for a little bit to, you know, be shot out into space, land, get disorientated, figure out where he is, go to a club and buy a drink.
No, I think they would have landed, time skip, like Bill would have found them, got back to health and like.
But he didn't know Buzzkirk, that's the thing. Because he goes back home to find Kin and Chris there, because obviously he saved them because he explained that. But then he starts talking about Buzzkirk, and they're like, oh, that's Buzzkirk, he landed here. And it's like, so wait.
So Buzzkirk just landed on a planet, and instead of finding his friends, he went to a club to get drunk and get into a fight.
I feel like they should have at least shown them landing. At least that. Not just having shot into space and then suddenly there's this planet that we're like, okay, we're going to this planet now because none of our characters are there. Oh, wait, no, Buzzkirk is actually there. Wait a minute, where are the others? Wait a minute, how did he get to this club? Wait a minute, like there's so many.
Okay, so he would have landed maybe first because his pod was heavier or something, like timey-wimey say. So he's waiting for the others to arrive or he can't find them. And the science fiction rule is if you're looking for someone, you always go to the club or the bar because it's the best place to find information, especially one with lowlifes, because lowlifes are the ones that will have all the information. So he was probably scouting out, trying to dig up some information on where his mates are, and also decided to have a drink to make sure he looked like he was one of them.
But again, I think if you just see like the planet and you just see of just the things landing, like just a little poof of smoke on the surface of the planet. That's all you needed just to show that they landed on the same planet. Yeah. That's all you needed to show. But they didn't even do that. It was just, we're shot into space. Now on a planet. Hey, I'm in a club. It was just like, no, you need something.
It needs a little bit of,
It's a very jarring jump. Also, I love it when they're in the pods. That like when they were trying to decide who should go with who, and then Chris was like, I'll go with Kin because I need to take care of him and blah blah blah, and then she was like, I will keep you safe or whatever, and then she lies on him and he's got all these burns on his body and it's like, love, go to the side or something, like just get off him. Like,
just don't be like, oh no, this poor young boy, I must tend to his wounds, but I must get off. It's like, woman, I know that like your options are limited, but you know he is recovering.
Exactly, I know you're cramped, but you're not making things any better, so just get off the boy. Near the end, when they're escaping the complex thing, when they just saved Buzzkirk and they're trying to get out, it's that classic trope of these guards obviously are good at their job because when they go to the clubs, they're beating people up and they're shooting people and, you know, they're... For some reason, they cannot shoot a protagonist. No. They seem to repel lasers. They just can't. They're right there in front of them. There's about 50 bullets coming at them, and they just can't get the buggers. Yeah. It's just a typical hero trope of I just don't get shot.
Yeah.
I get burnt by an electric ball, but 50 lasers, no problem.
Brilliant.
I do like at the end where you think that he has beaten Hellman's mayonnaise, and he's like, Chris, and he goes running, and then surprise, he's not dead, and it's like, yeah. Good surprise twist at the end. I thought that was great. But that means that the lens lied, because he was like, how did I win? She was like, oh, it's the power of love and saving the one that you loved. It's like, well, you didn't kill him, so it wasn't, was it?
No,
Lens.
it's like
The lens is a lie.
and also you can't rush love. They haven't known each other that long. Their bond isn't strong enough.
But yes, then Kin saves the day with Wazzle, and
Yay,
it's all is well, and they go back to the ship. And then I don't know if you noticed, but when Chris is once again bandaging Kin, it's the same place where she was bandaging him at the start, so it's like full circle. It's like she started there and she finished there, and it's like, no, full circle. And I like it where like Buzzkirk is like, give us a hug, and she's like, no, stop, someone help me. It's like she's laughing, but at the same time like, please, someone help me. I don't like
I'm not sure I'm into this.
It's like a poor woman. He's like, oh, this is so fun, get off me. And then the very cool ending of they're flying off into space, everything's happy, and then you get the fragment of Hellman just flying off into space of a to be continued. So they could end it there. They could end it there forever, us not knowing, or they could have the option of going on to make more. So I think it was a really good, clever ending.
Yeah.
And that was the end.
Good.
Yeah.
It's silly. So my favourite part is the snail planet. Those like, you know, opium snail dens, and they just looked fabulous. And it was just
I was so sad that it was like, oh, they're so cute. Oh, they're all so high. I make it. Oh, they're trying to eat them. Oh.
Yeah, they're not
good.
Fire. Yeah, they're bad snails. And then poor, obviously, like Chris is like, oh no, something else is trying to rip me apart, so I have to make the female noise.
Literally like 3 times she had things pulling at her from every direction.
Yeah, that's a lot of that. And I liked that particular planet in that world because I love bioorganic technology. So like when that like weird ship is trying to hunt them down, and they like kind of jump in it to like pull out the pilot, and it's like it's not all beep 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 technology. It's like this is a weird living husk thing, and there's membrane, and you've got to like, and it's and they're like, how the hell are we meant to pilot this thing? Because clearly we're not compatible DNA wise. And it's just like, oh, I love that kind of sci-fi. You just don't see that in any sci-fi anymore. Like
Evangelion.
Well, no, that's like something else. Obviously, that's like mecha and that's sci-fi. But I'm thinking of like when you think of like the science fiction, especially Western science fiction. When was the last time you saw like spaceships that were like also aliens, apart from Farscape?
I don't watch a lot of sci-fi, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Well, yeah, Farscape, like Space Above and Beyond, but like not actually like organic interfacing like that, where the ships are part technology. So basically, if like David Cronenberg wrote hard sci-fi and made spaceships, it was just like, oh, it's good. I like that kind of tech.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about?
I really like Wurzel. I'm like, you heart.
There always has to be a hot dinosaur thing, doesn't there? Okay, so what should we give it out of 5?
Oh, I don't know. It's just like, it's got such interesting and wonderful ideas and stuff, but because of like the timing of watching it, a lot of it you're like, you cannot not see the Star Wars in it, and that's really unfortunate. And the animation is wonderful, but at the same time, like, the technology has come so far. So some of the characters seem very tropey, but the world building is fantastic. So it's hard. Like, I don't want to just be like, oh, nostalgia of 4, when like I'm like, actually, if you look at it, they could have edited it better. They could have paced it better. So maybe a 3. I mean, it is really good, but it does pit like character archetypes, and like some of the story beats are just far too obvious and done for me to truly like love it. Apart from Wurzel, who's amazing.
3 what?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. 3 tittle. 3 titties. No. 3 tickle tentacles.
3 tickle tentacles. Do you know what? I'm going to go with the 3 as well. Mostly because I did find myself zoning out a little bit near the end. Like the whole chase thing, it went on for quite a long time, and I was just like, okay, I'm getting a little bit bored of this whole chase sequence now. But the music does save it quite exponentially. What's that word? Exponentially. Don't use big words, Sagira.
Exponentially.
It saves it a lot. So yes, for music, I will give it a 3 out of 5 tickly tentacles.
Yay!
And that was Lensman. So let's go into our social media.
Oh, well, mine's obviously my social media is coming in on tickle tentacles. Look! Oh no! Ah! That's less ripped apart and more like I'm being. Oh well.
Tickled.
Tickled.
And there's your social media. Mine is coming in on. It's going to appear. Okay, mine is going to appear in a lens. So there's the lens. And what's that in the lens? I can just about see something. Social media. What kind? Ha ha. Oh, it's Sagira's social media.
Beautiful.
Say bye-bye, Lizzie.
So for now, this is a Weeaboo saying Johnny.
And this is a newbie saying, tickle, 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 hee, 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 ah!